I'm giving 2 talks at Badcamp. This is the first. It's not how to create a chatbot the easy way. That's tomorrow. Today, we're doing how to create a AI chatbot in Drupal the hard way. What does that mean? Well, we'll get into it. What it really means is headless. We're going to have a Drupal site, a headless front end, and a chatbot. And we're going to learn how all those things mix together. Who am I? My name is Jordan. I've been doing Drupal for about 19 years now, since version 6. And most recently, I've gotten into the AI space and recipes and some of that fun stuff. So we're going to poke at some of those things today. Table of contents. Introduction we've done. We're going to go through some requirements of what components you would actually need to do this yourself. I'm going to talk a little bit about local development. I see some nodding. If you're not doing local development, you really should. It's a valuable, useful thing, especially with this kind of thing. You get much faster iteration times. You can experiment and then just run the experiment locally much faster than it takes to push everything up to a server. We're going to talk about REST export. That's basically how do you get your information out of Drupal into the chatbot. We're going to talk about how to actually build the chatbot, a little bit about the React app, which is the front end, and then what's next. What other things could we do that we don't have time to talk about in this talk? So, architecture. This is a basic overview. If you're used to Drupal, raise your hands how many people have built a Drupal site. Oh, that's just about it. Okay, everybody. I'm in the right place. So on the left, that's the standard Drupal stack. You've got your LAMP stack or your LEMP stack. Raise your hands if you know what LAMP stands for. Okay, most people. What about LEMP? Okay, 2 hands. It's basically the same. It's Nginx instead of Apache. Nginx is the new hotness. It has been for a while now. Apache is still around. I found that I have better performance when using Drupal with Nginx, and it seems to be the popular architecture for a lot of web hosts. Why are we talking about web hosting? Well, we have to. This is Drupal the hard way. You can't just go to Pantheon and spin this stuff up. No, that's okay. I really appreciate the airflow. yeah. So somebody walks by with their boombox on, then that's it. Okay, so we have to talk about hosting at least a little bit. I'm not going to tell you, which host to buy, but the point is something like Pantheon. I love Pantheon. They can't do all this. They're not doing the front end. They're not hosting Python. So you're going to need some sort of custom hosting solution. I really just talk mostly about how to do it in your local environment, how to get it going. I've submitted a talk for DrupalCon on Drupal with Kubernetes, which would be the next step to basically take all this, wrap it in a container, and push it up to your Kubernetes server. But that's beyond the scope of today's talk. So you've got your traditional stack on the left. You've got Drupal. You've got your REST export, which we'll talk about in a minute. But that's, like I said, that's how you get your information out of Drupal. In the middle, you've got your orange stack, which is new. At the bottom, you've got Next.js. Next.js is kind of like PHP. It's, I don't even know how to describe it properly. It's a server platform, and you can use it to serve JavaScript files. You can use it to serve a React website. So that we're talking about a very lightweight front end that you can slap on top of Drupal. But it's not really on top of, it's really next to. In fact, it doesn't even need to be on the same server, to be honest. But the point is, you have a separate stack here with Next.js, React, and then your chat widget. You're going to have to write a chat widget. If you're doing headless, it means you're responsible for the UI. If you use traditional Drupal, the UI is built in, right? So with headless, you're accepting that there's going to be a little bit more work to build out your front end. And then finally, we'll talk more about this in a few minutes. On the right, you've got your Python stack. Most AI runs Python. Drupal doesn't, right? Drupal is mostly PHP and jQuery or some other form of JavaScript. React, of course, is also JavaScript. So great, those worlds are all sort of same language. If you haven't learned Python, it's a great language. I find it easier than PHP and JavaScript, so don't be afraid to sort of dip your toe in the water. But that's what you're going to need. You're going to need a server that can run Python. You're also going to need a vector database. That's a lot scarier. It sounds a lot scarier than it is. I basically use like a CSV file as my vector database, but you're good. There's a process of taking that data out of Drupal. Quick question: what kind of database does Drupal use, generally speaking? MySQL. Perfect. Yeah. MySQL, it's a relational database. That's the point. That's what, if you're using that or MongoDB or whatever, it's a relational database. That's what Drupal uses. That's what most PHP web apps use. AI uses a vector database. It's different. In my other talk, I go into a little bit more about what a vector database is and what makes it different, but suffice it to say, that's how the AI looks at your data. It's different. And so you have to get your information from MySQL into the vector database. We'll talk a bit about how to do that. And then on top of that, you have your chatbot. That runs as a daemon on your server, and it accepts requests from the front end. So that's it. Did I touch something? Okay. So that's it. That is the architecture. That's the stack. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, obviously, there's other things you could add to this and go crazy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But that's it. That's the basic stack. What do you need to make this work? You need a dev environment. You need some sort of containerization for your dev environment. My favorite is DDEV. Other solutions include Lando and Doxel. I'm not going to be bashful about sharing my own recommendations. You're welcome to use whatever you want. I'm not saying DDEV is the only option, but it's the one that I happen to use. And then you're going to need a code editor. If you were in the last session with Mark Free, he mentioned a few different great options for code editors. There's JetBrains, there's VS Code, there's Windsurf, there's Cursor, but you need a code editor and a terminal. If you're using an IDE like PHP Storm, those are both built into the same tool, but the point is you're going to need those things. That's about it. What do you need to do? You need to install Drupal, you need to install React, and you need to install DDEV. Drupal, raise a hand if you know how to install Drupal in a local environment or on a server. Yeah, okay, that's basically everybody in this room. That's great. It's Composer, right? React, with that Node stack, that is NPM, Node Package Manager, right? So just like Composer, but for Node packages. And then DDEV, show of hands if you used DDEV before, some other local tool. Oh, just about everybody, great. So same deal, you have to install that, and once it's installed, it's running. DDEV config to spin up a new project. This is important. If you're using DDEV, if you're using Doxel or Lando, I'm sorry, you're on your own. If you're using DDEV, this is how you configure it. And this is this goes inside your DDEV folder. It's the config.yaml. It's just a YAML file. So if you've worked with Drupal in the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years, you've probably worked with YAML files. So hopefully this isn't too scary. At the top, there's the name, there's the type, there's the doc root. This is all standard. I'm gonna walk over here for a sec. This is all standard DDEV config at the top. But where it gets interesting is down at the bottom. We've got a web extra exposed ports with a name, Node.js, and container port is 3000. HTTPS port is 3000. What that's doing is it's exposing the port. And remember, you're going to have the inside of the container and the outside of the container. So you have to define both of those. In this case, I'm basically just mapping 3000 to 3000. When you run the Node.js front end and you spin up your React front end, by default, it runs on port 3000. Obviously, if you're setting this up on a server, you're going to want to port that to something else. But for local development, it's great. Why is it great? Because Drupal's already running on port 443, or port 80, right, which is HTTPS. You don't want to compete in your local environment with two different browsers trying to run on the same port on the same local environment. So by default, React runs on port 3000, that's great. But we need to make sure that that gets outside of DDEV. DDEV by default isn't meant to do this kind of thing, to be honest. It's meant to run PHP web apps with MySQL and all that other stuff. So it's a little heavy for the front end, but you can run them both in the same container, and that's the point I'm trying to get at. If you stick both code, like a mono repo, both code bases in the same DDEV container, you poke a hole in the container for port 3000, and then the other thing you do down here, web extra daemons is the name of the YAML directive, given in a named front end, and what this is you can tell DDEV every time it starts up to start a daemon. And that daemon can be any command you want. In this case, we're running npm install and npm start. And that double command, npm install is obvious, but npm start starts at the server. And so that double command, every time you do DDEV start, it's going to reinstall and then start your front end server, right? Directory, I'm pointing to my subdirectory where the React files are stored. And that's it. So we're poking a hole in our container so that it can get through, and then we're telling it to turn on this daemon. And that should be enough to get it running inside your DDEV. So far, so good. If you follow the instructions at home so far, you've got DDEV running, you've got Drupal running, you might even have your React site up and running all in the same container in your local environment. Great. Let's say you also have a running Drupal site and you've got some data in it already. If you don't, there's a trick. Just install vanilla Drupal and it comes with the Umami demo site. When you're installing Drupal, you get three options, right? Minimal, standard, or Umami. Click on Umami. No one ever does. Go ahead and do it. And what you get is a site filled with recipes. I'm actually going to use that in my demo tomorrow. I'm not sure I'm going to get to a demo today, but we'll see. We'll try. But the point is, if you're just looking for content to try this out at home and you don't have good content, that's the way to get good content. It's recipes. It's a recipe site. And then you can export those recipes. Why am I talking about content? This is something that Mark touched on in the last session, and I'm going to just touch on it very briefly too. Your AI is only as good as the content you have. It does matter which LLM you use, right? Because the more modern ones have better thinking abilities, but they are going to do a terrible job if you don't give them good data to work with. And so that's why I'm talking a little bit about content you need. So you can't just spin up an empty vanilla Drupal site and then say, great, now I have a chatbot. I mean, you do, but it's not going to know anything, right? That's the point. So get some data, either from your professional site or your personal site or Umami, and then you need to export it from Drupal. So that is what this list of instructions does. DDEV start, DDEV composer require. It's spilling onto the second line, but I'm installing two things with Composer here. CSV serialization module and Drush. Drush is just, you always want Drush. And the reason you always want Drush is because the very next command there is DDEV drush enable CSV serialization. Also, REST module. REST comes built in core now, which is great. And then DDEV drush ULI is just to log in. Drush ULI just gives you a URL. In your terminal, you click on it, and it logs you onto your Drupal site. It's a great tool if you're not using it. Why does it say DDEV in front of all those commands? The answer is because we're in our host machine, and we're running DDEV as a guest, right? So we've got this whole LAMP stack spun up inside our laptop as a guest, and we're trying to send the drush command into the guest. So if you just type drush, then it thinks that your host machine, Mac OS is trying, or Windows or whatever, is trying to execute drush. I don't even have drush installed on this computer, but I do have it installed in the container. So you run DDEV, then drush, and it knows to send that command inside. But you still need to install it. Okay, fine. So we're turning on the CSV serialization module, and we're turning on the REST module. Why CSV serialization? It's an option. There's others. There's the JSON API module, which is great. There's GraphQL, which is also great. It's really powerful. I chose CSV serialization because it's a very simple way to accomplish what I'm trying to do, which is just get the data out, right? It's going to just get exported as a CSV, comma separated values, basically spreadsheet, right? Gets exported as a spreadsheet, and then our chatbot can consume it. So one step at a time, but that's where we're going. Next step, is this making sense to everybody so far? Am I skipping too many steps? All right, good. All right, I'm getting thumbs up. Okay. Next step is the chatbot. Assuming you're following these instructions along at home, you've got a Drupal site, you've got content, you've enabled the CSV module, you've got to create a view. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the views module. Okay, just about everybody. So you create a view, you create your CSV export of your data. Great. Now you have a CSV file on your laptop of your data. What do you do with that? Well, I wrote a chatbot. It's open source. It's based on a free class I took like 2 years ago online. So it's not super up to date. It's not amazing code, but you can get it from GitHub for free. So that it has that going for it. And it does two things. The first is it has an embed script, which I'll show you in a minute, which basically it's a command line script. It's in Python, and you type it in, and it takes that CSV file, and it embeds it into your vector database. And that's it. It's the embed command, and once you've done that, your code's in. So it's one step, and you get there. What else are you going to need to make this work? You're going to need environment variables. Why am I talking about environment variables and not just config? You could just put these values in config. The reason I'm telling you not to is because we're talking about local environments. We're talking about pushing things to servers. A good general rule of thumb, which is not in this presentation, but it's worth mentioning, is don't store secrets in code. We've all done it. I'm guilty of it, but you shouldn't. And so I'm trying to give these instructions in a way to encourage best practices. So what do you need? You need an OpenAI API key. It doesn't have to be OpenAI. Again, I'm opinionated, and that's okay. I like OpenAI. Claude is also good. So is Gemini. So is Llama. So is a bunch of other LLMs a bunch of providers you can use. So you got to pick one. You got to get an API key. One benefit of using the API key, as opposed to the talk that Mark Fareed just gave, is when you use an API key, it ends up being cheaper. You're not going to pay $20, $40, $100 a month, probably. Requests made directly to the API are cheaper than requests made through OpenAI's chat UI website. So you don't have to pay a monthly fee. You just give them your credit card, which is still scary. But you give them your credit card, and it's a fraction of a cent per query, depending on what you're doing. Yeah, question?
I have a secret to make that much less scary.
Okay.
Give me your boss's credit card.
Yes, that's a good tip. If you can, play with someone else's money, that's always a good idea. But the other thing that's a good tip is you can always set limits. Yes, thank you. When you're creating an API key, set limits in the system. It'll give you warnings. It'll let you know when you've hit your threshold. And so you don't get surprises like the next morning you wake up and you were vibe coding all night long, and now you've got a $2,000 bill, right? So we want to avoid that. So get an API key from OpenAI or some other provider. You're going to need a file path for your certificate. This is assuming that you're actually trying to host a website that supports SSL or TLS security certificates, right? And just the modern web stuff. So you need a cert file path, a key file path, and then finally, you need allow origins. That's a list of domains that you're going to basically allow to talk to your chatbot. The reason that's important is because if you don't do that, you get a CORS error. Raise your hands, who knows what a CORS error is? Oh, okay. CORS is when you have two different servers talking to each other, and they say no. And the reason they say no is because you're on one website, and it's secretly like, reaching around and grabbing something from another website and then giving it back to you. And most modern web browsers are smart enough to say, hold on a second, that's not safe, that's not secure. You're doing something that can expose you to third-party attacks, third-party information, whatever. That's why you need your SSL certificates. And that's also why you need to allow origins, because you can tell this, you can set up the server to say, okay, I will allow cross-origin requests, but only from this certain list. So you create an allow list, and once you have your CORS config running properly, the requests just flow. But only between those 2 points, which is exactly what you want. So these are the environment variables you need to set up. Everything good so far? Should I keep going? I'm seeing nods. Beautiful. Okay. Python time. I warned you this was coming. Raise your hands if you've worked with Python before. Oh, most people here, great. All right, so I'm preaching to the crowd. It's a great language. It's easy to use. You don't have to remember semicolons, for goodness sake. What is going on this page? 2 things. This is my CSV file. If you come up and look at the screen, it's actual real text. Don't bother. It's my personal blog. This is what I trained my own chatbot on. I've got 20 years of blog posts, like professional blog posts. And that's my data. That's what I trained it on. So you take the CSV file, you run this command, Python embed.py --URL, you put your URL, and this is all on the command line, -- primary body. What's body? Body is the body field. This is Drupal terminology. You just exported something from Drupal. It's nodes, right? Nodes usually have a body field. So I'm telling the embedder that the primary field to look at when you're processing all this information is the body field. I can have as many different columns in my CSV as I want, and I can tell the AI to swoop in as many of those as I want, but I'm keeping it simple. I'm telling it the primary key is the body field. Okay, great. Question, yeah?
So that's the thing there, this is important. You said training.
Yes.
Fine-tuning pre-existing LLMs, or are you just feeding this with content?
That's a great question. Fine-tuning comes later, but yes.
So we're not fine-tuning, are we?
We'll get there, but this is not fine-tuning. This is just embedding. This is just
training, which means
yes. Well, okay. That's a great question. Yeah. There's all these terms floating around, and they mean different things to different people, but that's a really good question. So when I say training, in this case, I'm just talking about embedding. I'm just talking about getting the data into the vector database so that the chatbot can read it. In terms of improving your prompt over time, that is a great question, but we'll talk about that later. Sorry?
Actually, training is expensive and time.
Yes, it is. And it takes human brain power, too. Because somebody has... Prompts are... I'm getting ahead of myself. Prompts are written in plain... It's okay. Prompts are written in plain English. And so anybody can do them, which is sort of a beautiful secret of AI. I've been on projects where like everybody was a developer, and then the product manager comes along and says, how can I help it? You know what? You can write prompts. And so she spent all day in a hackathon writing prompts, and she does fine-tuning, and she got really good at it, and we ended up with a really good prompt for our project. And no technical experience at all. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so what are we doing? We've got our CSV, we're running the embed command, and then restart copybot. That's the daemon, the chatbot daemon that runs on the server, right? You have to restart it so that it knows that new information, that's all. That's not per se necessary, it just depends on how you've set up your system. So in this case, I'm just using system daemons in Linux on a server somewhere. So system control, restart copybot, that's it, that's all you need to do. Okay, that's it for the backend. We've talked about Drupal, we've talked about the Python stack. The last bit is the front end. Yeah, question?
Sorry, Greg.
Yeah.
Did you say what vector database you have installed?
That's a great question. I did not. The answer is it's just, I'll go back. The answer is it's just a CSV file being stored on the hard drive of my Linux server. That's it. So in my case, I'm not using Kubernetes or anything. If I do to get to the demo, it's just on a Drupal, on a DigitalOcean droplet. It's just a virtual private server, just old-fashioned, no cloud-based fnooty, just running a LAMP stack. And I have the little daemon running there, and it literally just stores the CSV file, the vector database version of it, in the directory. That's all it does. You could use a third-party service like Pinecone or Hugging Face. I think handles that kind of thing. In my case, in this case, I chose not to. We were doing this the hard way. But the advantage of doing it this way is you get to store your information on your own server.
So that embed.py file that you're running there is sort of crucial to creating the embeddings.
Yes.
Something in that that's
Yes.
causing the embeddings to happen.
Yes, exactly. This is open source. I mean, when I get to the demo portion, if we have time, I can actually just show you the raw code. There's some math in there, which I'm not good at math personally. But like I said, I got this from a class, and the darn thing works. That's all I can say. You don't need to go through these steps necessarily in order to get your Drupal information into a vector database. If you want to know the easier way to do it, come to my talk tomorrow. You can export directly from Search API into Pinecone, but then you're not controlling your own data. So, it depends what's important to you. Maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe exporting into Pinecone is totally fine. Get your credit card out, give them $10 a month or $5 or whatever, and your problems are solved. You don't have to do any of this. But this is the AI chatbot the hard way, so here we are. Like I said, we've covered Drupal, we've covered the chatbot in Python. Now let's talk just a little bit about the front end. You can tell I'm taking some big steps here from one point to the next. We don't have time to install Next.js and install React and npm, blah, blah, blah. But I can shortcut this a little bit. You're going to have to write some HTML for the chatbot, for the front end. Just a little box, text box, submit button, area on the page where the answer can go, just basic stuff. I've already done it. It's also open source, and there's an npm package for that. So there's the command right there. You can also just go to GitHub and take a look at the source code for that as well. But again, it's just shortcutting one more step. You can literally just npm install and then put a little chatbot widget in your front end, in your React page, and it'll just load up a very simple widget. Which if I get to the demo, in fact, yeah, you know what? Demo time. Live demos never work, so and we all know that. But let's try it out. Here we go. Here, if I can just get back to the right. Yeah, we'll go here. Okay, all right, here we go. So what are we looking at now? This is my personal website. It's a headless website. It has Drupal on the back end with React front end. So it's everything I've been talking about. Here's my blog. I didn't talk about anything about how to pull blog content into a React front end. That's a whole separate conversation. This is just about the chatbot. So let's go to the chatbot. Here it is. Very, very simple. It doesn't even have pop-up widgets or anything. I don't even have a design library on here. It's just raw HTML. I got my 12-year-old to do the graphic at the top. Let's ask it a question. Tell me about Badcamp. So now I just typed it in. The React widget captured my text, submitted it to the chatbot, and then the chatbot responds, and that gets displayed on the page, and that's React. Badcamp is an event where people gather to discuss and learn about Drupal. Awesome. That is the demo. Let's see what else we can talk about. I do have a little bit more in this presentation. Any questions before I move on from the demo? Did you want to see the source code of anything in particular? Or should I just talk about what next steps, what else can we do with this kind of? All right, let's move on. There's my buttons. There's the button. Okay, what's next? That's actually a pun. What's next is Next Drupal. Chapter 3 has released and is still maintaining this package of Drupal and React, and it's designed exactly for this kind of thing so that you can quickly and easily set up a headless Drupal site. That's not what I used. If I were to do it again, I would absolutely use it. It looks like a phenomenal option. One reason I didn't use it myself is because I'm usually afraid of opinionated solutions. And I wanted to sort of get that experience of doing it the hard way and doing it all myself. Sort of like driving a stick versus driving a manual car, right? But I would absolutely recommend that package. What else? The embed model is just some custom code that I put in there. I'm sure it can be improved. The chat model, the LLM that I'm using is 4.0. I think they've got a newer version now, so I could update that. I could add some front end improvements, add a design library, bootstrap, something like that. Contrib modules. There's the AI module. I didn't use that at all in this demonstration. I certainly could be. They've got a list of providers. If you use the AI module, they can do half the work for you. I didn't see anything about using AI with the AI module with Headless though. So you can spin up a chatbot just using the AI module, no code required. If you want to know how, come to my talk tomorrow. But it's also possible to do it without it. JSON API module I mentioned before, that's a phenomenal way of doing the same thing. You can basically, rather than building your own view to export your own content, you can just install the JSON API module and you just have to learn how to make queries with it. But it's just, it's a URL. You're forming a URL. And you say, slash JSON API slash node content slash whatever, and it just gives you a list in JSON format of whatever you want. And then JSON format is really good because JavaScript, which is what React is written in, is really good at consuming it. So I used CSV because it was going into Python. JSON is also, I think Python invented the JSON protocol. But in any case, that's certainly an option with Python as well. It's just not the one I chose in this case. But I think if I were to do this over, I would absolutely do that. Third-party services we talked about a little bit. LangChain, OpenAI, Hugging Face. There's all these third-party services that can do basically all that heavy lifting for you. Right. And then the last thing we didn't talk about really at all is hosting. I gave a shout out to my own web host. They're absolutely not the only option. The only thing to keep in mind is that the more popular high-performance web hosts like Pantheon and Acquia are not tooled for this, not yet. So if you're going to do something like this, you're going to have to get your hands dirty a little bit with the Node.js server and the Python server. And like I said, in my case, I did it all on a VPS. You can just do it on one installation, one Linux instance, and just sort of do it all yourself. Or you can do something fancier with Kubernetes. There's a lot of ways to do it. But yeah, those are the things that you could do to add on to this project.
Did you say you're running your own Linux server for the update?
I've done that. I would not recommend it, and the reason is because of blackouts. You go on vacation, your apartment has a blackout, your blog just went down for a week. Too bad, right? So that's the only reason I wouldn't recommend doing it out of your own apartment. But although, again, I take it back. Do it. Get the experience. Have fun with it, learn from it, and then as soon as you're ready, graduate to paid hosting. We've sort of been doing this the whole time, but are there questions that haven't been answered yet? Comments, observations?
This is random.
Yeah, please.
People thought putting a model switcher.
That's a great question. No. Model switchers, MCP, a lot of other, okay, no, I take it back. Yes, I did. And the reason I didn't do it is because it's another layer to implement a model switcher on top of your LLM, right? You have to have another layer of logic. So the request comes in, the query, right? And then you have some logic, maybe it's an AI or maybe it's not, that has to sort of bifurcate that request in one direction or another into one LLM or another, with prompt A or prompt B, based on what the question was. So that's just another layer of complexity. But yeah, that's a great idea. That's something else you could have. Yeah. Any other comments? Yeah.
Maybe some guardrails around making sure that the LLM's not answering things you don't want it to outside.
Yes. Yes. You know, I said I was going to talk about the prompt and then I didn't. I lied to you and I feel bad about that. So because of that, let's go back and I will show you if I can get to GitHub. That's not it. Where is it? Copybot, I think, is where it is. No, that's the recipe that we're going to talk about tomorrow. Here we go. Prompt.txt. This is how I set it up so that my Python code literally just grabs a text file, and this is my prompt. And you know, if you download this, you can edit this to whatever you want. Answer the question based on the context below, and if it can't be answered based on the context, then redirect the user to a similar topic. That's how I did it, because I don't know, I have a few dozen blog posts, that's it. It's a very limited content set. And I already talked about how important your content is. So if I ask my chatbot something that it can't answer, I don't want it to just say, I don't know, because then you get these hilarious results. I told my friends about this website before I'd done the fine-tuning, and they were getting answers like, oh, Jordan doesn't know how to make a website. Jordan doesn't know how to make an old-fashioned cocktail. Yes, I do. I promise you, I know how to make an old-fashioned cocktail. But the point is, if you ask this website about that, it doesn't know that information. But what I do want it to do is redirect back to something it can talk about. And so that's how I did my fine-tuning. It's just an example. But yeah, so that's how I did it. Very similar to what Mark III was talking about in the last session. He was talking about using Markdown. I just used plain text. But it's the same exact idea. Markdown's a little fancier, a little more powerful. AIs are good at consuming Markdown, so it's a good option. But yeah, that's something else I could do to improve. Any other questions? Okay, well, last slide is thank you. Appreciate it. All right, I think we can end a little early. Let's go get drunk.